Cluster Munitions, an anti-personnel weapon that releases a large number of tiny bomblets in order to blanket an area. The video you just saw was of one being detonated in the Syrian city of Aleppo, but more recently these weapons have been making headlines because of their use in Ukraine. Along with landmines, cluster munitions are infamous because they are indiscriminate and often kill civilians. Many of their bomblets will be duds and remain undetonated on the battlefield. This means that decades later, long after the fighting has ceased, children playing on the edge of their village just might happen across one of these shiny dormant bombs. In this video, I'm going to show the effects that remnants of war, like landmines and cluster munitions, can have on civilians. I'm going to talk about the morality of their use in the Ukrainian conflict, and if you stick around until the end, I'm going to show you what you can do today to help the people in Ukraine and elsewhere who suffer from the use of these weapons. Now before I continue, I want to make it clear why I'm specifically talking about this class of weapon. Obviously, every weapon has the potential to hurt civilians, and even children, but cluster munitions are truly the Michael Jordan of collateral damage. To see the toll these weapons can have on people, Insider News reported on the case of a young boy named Salahuddin.
Salahuddin has worn this hat for almost 3 years. He was just throwing stones around with his cousins when one of them hit a bomb. The explosion fractured his skull and damaged his brain.
And while that's awful, it's worth noting that Salahuddin is not the only child who has faced this. In Afghanistan alone, nearly 160 people are killed by these unexploded weapons every single month. And nearly 80% of them are children. Of course, Afghanistan isn't alone either. From Cambodia to Egypt to Bosnia, unexploded weapons are a global crisis. Take Angola. For 27 years, the country was locked in a brutal civil war. By the time the war ended in 2002, 500,000 people had been killed, 1 million had been displaced, and more than 15 million landmines had been buried. Even today, 88,000 people living in Angola suffer from disabilities due to these landmines. What makes landmines so strategically useful is also what makes them so dangerous. They're cheap to place, but expensive to remove. The effects of these landmines have been devastating to the country. Now, more than 2 decades after the war's end, there's over 73 million square meters of contaminated land, with over 1,100 known and suspected minefields. NGOs have been working to help clear the country for decades, but progress has been slow. Mine Advisory Group, also known as MAG, is a non-profit that works in Angola. In more than 2 decades of work, it has only managed to clear 12% of potentially contaminated land. And I don't want to diminish the work they've done, because it's definitely not nothing. It's just disappointing that work visited in 1997 by Princess Diana is still ongoing for her son to visit 22 years later. A beacon of hope in the Mine Advisory Group's fight for the Angolan people has been the growing adoption of mechanical demining machines, which have in recent years allowed a metaphorical explosion in their mine clearing capabilities. In 2021 alone, MAG cleared over 1.8 million square meters, and in 2022, they did even better, clearing over 2 million square meters. Every minefield that's cleared is a village now free from fear. It's estimated that in 2021 alone, MAG helped over 70,000 people, and with their mechanical demining machines, there's finally hope for a mine-free Angola. Now back to Ukraine. If Angola shows us the lasting consequences of war, then Ukraine shows us the immediate brutality of it. With 6.2 million Ukrainian refugees, more than 90% of which are women and children, the Russian invasion has caused the largest refugee crisis since World War II. In retaliation, Ukraine launched counteroffensives in Kharkiv and Kherson and reclaimed hundreds of kilometers of lost territory. But these counteroffensives have hit a snag in the form of Russian landmines. In January 2023, the State Emergency Services of Ukraine estimated 30% of the country is contaminated with landmines, which in July, the World Bank estimated would cost $37 billion to remove. It goes without saying that removing mines will cost far more if the demining crews are getting shot at by Russian soldiers. Now I know what you're thinking, because it's what I began to wonder as I started looking into this topic. These weapons cause so much collateral damage. Why can't international law put a stop to this? And this isn't a naive question. In fact, there are 2 relevant international treaties that attempted to do just this. The first is the 1997 Ottawa Treaty, or as it is officially known, Convention on the Prohibition of the Use, Production, Stockpiling, and Transfer of anti-personnel mines and on their destruction. I'm going to call it the Ottawa Treaty. Well, this treaty was signed by 164 countries, including Ukraine, but not including the United States or Russia. In addition to the Ottawa Treaty, there is the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions. This was signed by 123 countries, but again was not signed by Russia or the United States, nor Ukraine this time. So Russia is turning Ukraine into Minesweeper on Windows Vista, and Ukraine is using US-supplied cluster munitions to defend itself. And while I hate cluster munitions, there is some humanitarian logic to the US supplying them here. First, Ukraine is the one getting invaded, and that matters. The land is Ukraine's, and it's already getting littered with Russian landmines. Ukraine should be free to decide how it defends itself. Second, US-supplied cluster munitions have much lower dead rates than those used by Russia and Ukraine. Whereas Russian weapons have dead rates as high as 40%, the weapons the US is supplying have failure rates of just 2 to 14%. This means that when Ukraine uses American weapons, they leave behind fewer bomblets to threaten civilians. Ultimately, the decision of what weapons to send is up to the Pentagon, but that doesn't mean that individuals can't make a difference. With a record-breaking refugee crisis in Europe, UNICEF has done an incredible job acting decisively and setting up a crisis response. Millions of children and families have received water, medical care, and even counseling and education due to their efforts. I have a link in the description where you can donate to help them continue their mission to bring normalcy back to the people of Ukraine. As for helping in Angola, you can make a one-time or a repeat donation to Mine Advisor Group, the charity we discussed earlier. With the advancement of demining technology, I really think Angola is at a tipping point, and donations now can make a huge difference, freeing millions of people from fear and putting the country on a good path. Check out the link in the description to learn more. If you learned something in the video, please use a mechanical demining machine to efficiently destroy the like button. If you end up taking the time to donate, letting me know in the comments section would make me feel very warm and fuzzy inside. And if you want to join us on our path to educate people on topics that matter, consider subscribing. As always, thank you for watching.